So we have Dr. Samson Tan. He runs the Innovation Center for the National Institute of Education of Singapore. So he's pretty much responsible for all the technology that you use or innovation that you experience of all Singaporean students. Then we have Carol Loy. So Carol is a digital literacy consultant as well as a family coach. So she will have a lot of insights into the topic we're sharing today. And Yue Mei, she has many years with Ministry of Education in Singapore, and now she runs 3 or 4 companies in the edutech space.
No, just 2.
Okay. iMath, which is a platform teaching math, and also Hey Hi, which is a whiteboard tool that I think now should be a very popular tool that people are using. So today, I think the discussion we want to touch on is the social aspect of learning online. So as we have all kind of moved into online in the last few weeks or couple of months, I think lots of schools has shut down across the world. Globally, I think the numbers are something like 1.2 billion students are actually out of the classroom. Whilst technology has been great in facilitating all these online classes, I think an area of challenge has been the lack of social or peer-to-peer interaction and learning and its effects on children. I don't think that's something we sort of discuss enough. So I think from you guys, I want to hear what are some of the effects that maybe you guys know of or have personally experienced with your clients, your students, and are there certain type of learners that are affected more than others? Yue Mei, would you like to go first?
I think ours might be a little biased because people who use our platform generally are already attuned to it. But I think research has shown that online learning seems to be working for the extreme ends of students, which I found that to be very interesting. It seems to be working for very shy students. I suppose, students who are shy in the classroom now could put in their questions on chats, or teachers could engage them on polls, so they still get to participate without having to come up front in front of their friends, having to speak up. But what I found interesting from the research is that it works well for very active ones as well. So my son belongs to the shy one, and I do notice that it is working out very well for him. So like teachers would send pre-recorded videos. He found that useful because he said he can pause the video and he can search up on the parts that he doesn't quite understand. Whereas in the class, he cannot ask the teacher, say, pause. and search it out. So on the shy part, there's kind of, well, 1 point verification that, yeah, it could be true. But for the active part, I thought that would be very interesting, why online learning actually works for the very active one. They stated that the hyperactive one, it works for them. Maybe they can take their mobile devices and walk around and still learn, whereas in the classroom, you can't stand up and walk around wherever you are. Yeah, so I found that quite interesting. Yeah.
Sam, anything to share from your experience?
I suppose when I talk about online learning, earlier you talked about the impact on the social learning part. I just want to take perhaps a few steps back. If you look at it, in the last, it was actually China, Hong Kong side, it started first, school shut down, and then it started to experience moving a lot of things at breakneck speed, right, to online learning. So in the process of learning, of moving that, we saw some good practices, but by and large, you see that there are a lot of problems in doing that, because first thing first is that in what we call the peacetime, non-crisis period, it's like online learning becomes like it's optional. It's not really practiced a lot among the teachers, lecturers as well in the higher ed. But when it comes to the crisis period, because the lack of practice, you find that there's a lack in the ability to adapt, right, to an online platform. And what I will say this right now would be that in the face-to-face classroom group practices, the bad practices become also, sorry, let's not say bad practices, ineffective teaching and learning become accentuated when you move on to the platform using tools, and the lack of practice of using those tools, and you don't understand the edtech behind that, that create a lot of problems. Some of the problem I saw was that even for my son was doing his learning, is that you have 3 or 4 platforms, and then you have more than 3 login passwords. Is that even I got confused? Yeah. So in our edtech business, we always talk about this. In NIE, is it one single sign-on? So you don't want to confuse the students. Whether you use 2 platforms, 3 platforms, or whatever number of tools, you talk about having them in one dashboard, right? So like right now, I'm looking at this dashboard right now. It's a very interesting thing. I see videos over here. I see chats. Chats is what we call in our digital learning business as a back channel. And the interesting thing is that this platform, you have the back channel up here, becomes very active. I can see all the comments coming in right now. Very good. Thank you very much. And I see polls. Polls is something that I use a lot as well. I like the fact that it's integrated over here. I can toggle very quickly. I can see who's in this. And so you can see that there's quite a bit of thinking in designing this platform over here, right? And if you start to see teachers or lecturers start moving it, you use different types of tech tools, trying to put them together. You have more than 4 or 5 tabs for students to do that. It's going to be very confusing. People toggle in and out, then you lose their kind of attention. That's one. The other thing is that the cognitive load that you need to learn how to use this. These are procedural knowledge. So these are some of the things that becomes very obvious. And not to forget, sometimes we have drop in signals. Wi-Fi signal. That's a big no-no, especially to our younger students. Sorry, not younger, but our K-12 or even our higher ed students. So all this compounded together, start thinking, hey, online learning is not effective. I think that's not true. I have something to say about it, but before I go into that, perhaps Carol can say something.
Yeah. I was going to say, let's bring back to the social aspect, right? Because I think, like, are some students getting anxiety because of the tech phobia, or are they, because of their personality, they can't sit still, or how does that, they miss their friends? I mean, a lot of young children, even older children, a big part of going to school actually is playing with my friends. So Carol, as a family coach, maybe you can also share with us. Yeah.
So maybe I can share, can you hear me? Maybe I can share about my experience running multiple sessions during the circuit breaker with different profiles. With young people, it's quite interesting. I run leadership sessions with young people. And it's quite interesting that they start to chat. When they get distracted, they would use the group chat function. Then they'll start to spam one another, which I think it's similar to what they do on WhatsApp, right? They just spam on the chat. So it distracts actually the whole group. Even those who are trying to focus on the learning will find that, hey, you guys, can you stop it? But actually that distracts them. So there's a lot of distraction that could happen. Then I learned already moving forward that I have to set the expectation right. So how we facilitate the session becomes important as well, just as how we would manage classroom management. There's also Zoom management or whatever platform in terms of managing the group. And I thought the other part, since we're talking about social, is when I experimented with different ways of providing support to families and to young people, especially during this stay-home school holiday. I find that when I curate sessions that bring young people and parents together, or even educators together, it brings a different kind of learning. In physical, it would be very weird, for example, for us to have a session with young people and their parents together. They would just feel very weird. But in an online setting, it seems that they are more willing to be able to come in the same space. Perhaps it's because there is more freedom in terms of whether you can choose whether you want to show your face or how much you want to contribute. But having that online space, and when we put different people together, that enables the learners to have different perspectives. I find that they are more willing to now mingle in an online space with people of older groups. So I have got, for example, I was running a leadership class. Majority are older people, but I've got a few 12-year-old who stuck with me for 8 sessions. Yeah, and they were willing and able to learn from the older people. So I think online learning has its challenges, the technical challenges, but I think it brings a different dimension of learning if we are able to use this in a way that can really enhance the learning for our young people, giving the different opportunities to learn from different people. I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to embark on that. Yeah.
Very interesting concept of how social means different things online, right? So, I mean, this is news to me. So it's really good to see, rather than seeing what it's not doing or what it compromises, it also opens up new opportunity to kind of social engagement. So that's really good, I think, learning for all of us who's trying to explore this online space. So I think, I guess given your different experiences, are there any tips for educators or practitioners or even parents if children are suffering a bit in this social, missing out on the social learning or peer-to-peer, what can we do to help to maybe dial that up a bit, or so that they feel a bit more supported and engaged?
Actually, I do see my one who is still schooling. I mean, right after HBL lesson, he will be engaged online with his friends on online games. So I think they are engaged socially, just that they are not engaged physically socially. They're not physically social with each other, which I think that aspect is something that we want to be aware of. So if they are interacting with their friends online, and maybe we can then get them out to do a little bit of physical work, because that otherwise they are seated, they are in the aircon room, or they are wherever they are, but they are on their devices and socializing. I think what we might be more aware or think ahead is how do they make new friends socially online? Because currently this, they already have their friends, they go online and they continue to play online games or continue to do coursework. So whether it is academic or social or gaming, they are interacting socially. But how do they make new friends? I think that is, let's say in a new school year, and for whatever reason, school can't be back to normal, how do then people make new friends? I think that is where whether there are platforms that allow people to mingle. I mean, I'm just very curious, like for example, if we go into happy hour later on, right? I don't know how it's going to be like. I mean, in a physical happy hour setting, you happen to just come face to face with somebody and you go, oh, hi, I'm so and so, and you start talking. But in
One way to find out.
yeah, so in a online, interactions are very is arranged and is planned, right? We plan to meet, so we come in to meet, and in fact it makes people on time. Like if I have a meeting, you go in there, you wait for 5 minutes, the other person don't come on, you probably go out. But in a physical space, you probably will wait a little bit longer because you already made your way to Starbucks and you wait for that person, so you might as well just order a coffee and wait half an hour. But in an online platform, I noticed that timeliness is somehow it just naturally set in. We're supposed to meet at 4 o'clock, you come in at 4:05, you don't see that person. So I think we might want to think ahead, how do we get people to socialize with new people if this situation were to persist? But current situation, those who already have their own friends, I think they somehow have found a way to socialize online. Yeah.
Okay, just want to talk about something, maybe not a quick fix or suggestion that or tips like this, but perhaps take 2 steps back to look at what's the root cause of the problem when it comes to less seemingly social interactions with one another or with the teachers. But I think it's also talk about if it's in the face-to-face practice about teaching and learning practices. I like what I pay a lot of attention to what other speakers talk about when I attend conferences. I like what Cheryl, first speaker, talked about. There's one thing that resonates a lot what we are doing in teaching and learning. She mentioned something about student agency. Yeah, anyone not paying attention? Yeah, so repent, go back and take a look at the recording, right? So Cheryl talked about student agency. That's a very important concept over here, right? If you look at it, OECD talk about future education 2030. There's a huge document over there. Just Google it, you can find it. It talks a lot about the framing of learning for future. And I just want to read to you another quote from them throughout this document. The concept of student agency basically talk about students who have the ability and the will to positively influence their own lives and the world around them. It simply means, if you translate that to a classroom environment, that they should have the capacity to set goals, reflect, and act responsibly or effect changes, right? And if you think about that, you say, hey, then teacher will start asking, many teachers over here, right? So what's our role right now? Right, as teachers, you should be like co-agents, co-agencies. So learning should involve not just about instruction, evaluation, or the teaching that happen in classroom, but this is the important part over here is the co-construction of knowledge. If we get that part right in the classroom, and then we start to translate that in the online learning environment, then you start thinking. Earlier, there's another speaker whom I cannot remember who mentioned this. Think like the learners, right? In the L&D section. If you are like co-agent, you will start to think about, hey, what will happen to my students if I have a Zoom session for 30 students? Then all your big pictures that I'm seeing, all the three of you right now, will become like thumbnail, super small. And it's like, I don't even see what's going on, yeah, over there. And then another practice over here is that if you teach 1 hour or 2 hours in the classroom or lecture, and then you try to do that over Zoom, I think you can knock the person out within 10, 15 minutes. This is a lot of, I don't even call that online learning. We'll call that remote teaching, right? So you're just teaching, you're just blasting away one-to-many in that kind of format. If you start to embrace student agency and co-agency, and you start to think about, hey, how would I be able to find a platform that enable my learner to quickly provide feedback that like I'm seeing right now coming up from the chats, then I'll be able to adjust my teaching. My student falling asleep, you have a poll for them, is that, are you all okay? Yeah, then there will be a thumbs up, whatever that's coming. So the interaction in the form of emoticons can help the teachers to adjust the pace, the speed, and then what we need to do to engage the student a bit more, make it a little bit more interactive. And if our practices over here is that 1 to 30, that's simply too many. And you want the students to be able to have time for them to have peer-to-peer learning. You have breakout rooms for them. In a classroom, you can set up very easily. Okay, 5 students go to, sorry, distribute 5 groups. You continue to learn. And Carol probably will say that the facilitating part comes in is that the teachers can become facilitators. So you want to look for platforms, tools that can enable the teacher to do that. Yeah. So again, to address the problems that we have to question our own practices first. Are we able to adapt our teaching practice in the face-to-face environment in a co-agency manner? And then you translate your pedagogy to your online platform. I think it's not just applicable to K-12 or higher ed, perhaps for L&D as well as adult learners. And many of our graduates actually join the workforce. They won't want to take the kind of teaching and learning that way anymore. They want to be able to have some control. They want to be able to manage their own learning. And so I think that's important even for the L&D folks, if there are any of them over here in this session.
Yeah, if I could add on to that, Crystal has a question in the chat about whether any of the speakers have any comments or positive learning on vulnerable, emotional, less transactional type of sharing. I just want to share my experience. I was sharing just now that I have sessions with both young people as well as adult learners. And the context of that, there were opportunities for the learners to be very vulnerable, and it goes back to really the facilitation, how we facilitate the whole session and create that same space so that we allow people to be authentic, we allow very honest sharing, and it's through really holding space the same way that we hold space actually in the physical. I found that we can also do that in the online space, and because we bring the different age groups together, they are able to hear one another and about conversations that they perhaps will not be able to hear in a physical, typical learning setting, because it's tend to be more difficult for different parties to come together in the physical. And so I find that when it's skillfully facilitated, even when it's multi-age group, we think in normal time, we would think that, wow, young people, we need to contextualizing for young people, the older people need to be contextualized. But actually, when we bring them into the same space, when we talk about common things about, for example, overcoming failures, this is actually common across different age groups. But the online space can be a safer space compared to a physical space when we have that kind of conversation, and when we keep a safe space for everyone to be able to be very authentic. I thought that has worked for me in different sessions. I thought of sharing, answering to Crystal's question. I hope that answers your question, Crystal.
Yeah, another attendee also mentioned about she works with kids with dyslexia. So yeah, I guess the other thing that's probably not addressed enough, or maybe I'm not exposed to it. How do you then online learning for such children with special learning challenges or needs? Anyone has any thoughts around that?
I think even with dyslexia, the teacher really needs to know what would engage the kids. right? Some has difficulty reading. Then you don't put out a whole big text on screen and get the kids to read. Some issues are with writing, but some kids, maybe they respond better with drawing. So you want to find a tool with a whiteboard that allows them to use drawing as a means to communicate or express their learning. So really, I think that the realm to special needs, or they call it additional needs kids, is very, very dependent on the teacher. So the teacher needs to know what are the tools that are available in the market and use those tools to enable the kids in the learning. So for example, if a particular tool has limited features, then really don't force yourself to use that tool. So it has to be the tools to suit the kids, not to force the kids to suit the tools, especially in this case, like, because the kids already have challenges ahead. So really the tools has to be the one.
Both of you? I guess given that now we're exploring all these new ways of teaching, new ways of delivering, new ways of facilitating education, do you see any new skills or innovation that will emerge through this whole almost acceleration of e-learning?
But there's no lack of looking at skills. If you ask that question, you can Google, and then probably you have 10, 20, or immediately comes up. One of those that will say a lot more about this economic forum. They always talk about future skills, future skills that people need, or future workforce need. And if you look at that, I'm not that I'm cynical about WEF, but I've said it before in another setting over here, is that those so-called soft skills, human skills, you talk about critical thinking, creative thinking, all that, those are just repackaging of some of those things that we talk about, the 21st century competency. And this is something that even among the education fraternity, we've been talking about it for the last 20 years, 20 years, and it has been evolving. And Yuemi probably will be able to testify that when she was with the ministry, we have talked about that before. It's just that some of these skills just morph into different terminologies, right? Not that I'm cynical about this. That's all good, right, to talk about good skills. But it's the way that you help students to acquire those that is important, right? And I think you need to go back. Again, I always talk about going back to basics. Address the core issues over here. How do you acquire them? You cannot teach collaborative skills by continuing to teach that I will teach you collaborative skills. You need to take this module, then you become. You need them to be able to practice them in front of the teachers. And then how do you weave that into an assessment? Whatever get measured, get done. Right, so our assessment expert want to say is that this specialist would say this: if it's not measured, then it will not happen. If it's not happening, then how can you just put it as what do you call it, lip service? It will become lip service after a period of time. No matter how well you weave that into the curriculum, because it doesn't become evident. Right, so I know that in some higher acts, for example, I'm just quoting example, not saying that this is the perfect example. I belong to this group called the PEN Problem-Based Learning Association. This is across North America, Europe, and then of course we have the Asian chapter, which I'm actively involved in over here. And when you talk about problem-based learning, they'll weave all that into their assessment. It's not just end of the year assessment. You also talk about formative assessment, giving feedback, creating opportunities for students to reflect where went wrong, how to fix it the next time we will start doing it. So these are the kind of opportunity in which you drive self-directed students to be able to motivate themselves to work well. You talk about collaborative learning. Collaborative learning is not teamwork. A lot of people always think that it's teamwork. Teamwork is you can divide and conquer. I do one part, you do one part, but I still don't know what the whole thing looks like, right? So a lot of all these kind of skills you need to really think about how you nurture that, foster that. You cannot force it into the students by making them take another module to do so, because then you will just remain at cognitive level. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
I think with online learning, the classroom becomes a transparent classroom, which is what I've been looking forward to, because for the longest time, the classroom has always been a closed classroom. You really don't know what is going on between the teacher and the students. So with an open classroom, I think teachers will it will be a new wave of professionalism. The teachers are already professional, but I think it will bring out that, another element of professionalism in them. They got to be really flexible in the way they use tools. So in the physical classroom, we talk about manipulatives. So on an online, so we talk about tools or different platforms. So they got to be able to manipulate between the various platform and tools, whether they put in interesting polls tools in there, quiz tools in there. So I think we're going to see more creative ways that teachers will be using tools and platforms online.
If I could offer a different perspective in terms of innovation, would it be possible for us to see innovation in terms of how we are partnering parents, how we are partnering families through technology? And where I'm coming from is really, I had an opportunity to be able to gain enough trust with the school leaders of my children's school to be able to host a parent-teacher meeting for all the levels in the school. And through that, I think we help to ease anxieties of the parents. And when the anxieties are addressed, I think we can be better partners in education in the best interest of our kids. And so if we are able to harness technology even beyond just classroom learning, but in terms of how we engage the larger school community, what benefit can we have for our learners? I thought I would just put that on the table for all of us to think about beyond just classroom learning.
You're right. Definitely engaging the parents is very important to make sure that we get that agency, right? Students, parents, teachers, organizations, schools, government. I think everybody is a journey and is a experience everybody has to go on.
I'll just say, yes, absolutely. That's the concept of co-agency. So you have not just teachers and students, parents, the community at large. You need to be involved in this. I just want to add another point over here, probably more for the teachers than our students in school, is the way in which you deal with digital tools. Earlier, it's a very interesting thing that Jackie, you arranged for us to be in the chat group, and I think Kokun shared something. The number of screens that he is actually monitoring. And if you can see my screen over here, I have 4 screens as well over here. So this is the reason why I'm like that is because I'm in the business of digital learning. So I'm used to all these kind of things already, and I work with multiple screens, multiple things at the same time. It's natural for our students, our younger folks, to be able to work with multiple screens and multiple things happening at the same time. But I wonder what kind of impact that will be on us as teachers. For me, in the beginning, I couldn't do this, but because there's competing things, I need to visualize some of the things. I need to continue to work on this. I need to see messages coming in from another screen coming in. So it becomes necessary for the nature of my work. But I wonder for those of us who are beginning to deal with this kind of learning environment, I'll call it virtual, digital ones and the physical one, what would that impact on them? And I'm not sure. This is something that I think some of us may need to acquire some of this capability to do so.
Actually, I do wonder from a child development perspective, is it something that's healthy for them, or do we actually encourage them to focus, put your device away and focus on the learning and not have so many things? So I guess as an education fraternity, that's something that we can perhaps figure out together. What is really in the best interest from the child development perspective?
I think for the kids, they probably just need to look at one. I think Sam is talking about as a professional, because we teach, yet we also have to manage, and we have the administrative.
So with that, I think we've come to the end of the session. In fact, we've gone over by a few minutes, but that's really great sharing. Definitely join us for happy hour, so you can experience the happy hour. Thank you very much again for your sharing, and look forward to continuing this conversation.
Right.
Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.